But today we're just sticking to the basics for the for loop. So let's go back to repetition. We are in repetition. And again, we'll start with something simple. We'll say, okay, so maybe we display numbers too, right? So we're like, well, maybe let's display some numbers. So we'll say display numbers with 4. And let me see here. We accept some number from the outside. And then we have to introduce the for loop. This one is kind of like a magic loop, right? They do a lot of stuff behind the scenes to make it easy for us to use. For example, here, like if we just want to display numbers, we can say for val. That can be named anything. That one's a target variable, right? So let me val is a target variable. So it's a variable. We can name it whatever. I name it val. For val in range, that's a keyword in Python. In range, we want from the number 1 to num. And let's see what that gives us. What are we doing? Well, we're just printing, right? Let's just print what? The target variable val. Okay, and this one we probably want to run it and then trace it to understand what's going on. So notice there's no condition for us. We're just sending something into this magic function, and in there we can be sure that they did something to like loop for us. We don't have to understand what they did. We just have to know how to use it. So let's see. Clear. And we have to go to main. Repetition dot and display numbers 4. And we say value 3. Let's see how that works. So let's run it. 1, 2. So it did start at 1 for us. So what did we say? We said for val, again, remember val is a variable. We'll trace it in a little bit. We're just trying to see what happens here. For range 1 to num, so it goes num minus 1. We said 3, but it did num minus 1. So maybe here we need to say, if we want to iterate all the way to 3, then here we need to say plus 1. So that we can get the output we desire, which is displayed up to the number we send in. So we go here, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now it works like the sum of the display numbers for a while. And notice that here it's a lot less code. It's just one line, and we don't have to worry about creating a counter or making the Boolean expression false. They handle everything for us. That's making it a very user-friendly looping structure, but we have to know how to use it. So let's go and trace this one. Again, please make sure that you're taking notes, or when you go back and watch the video, take screenshots of those and like understand how we're tracing the loop. So for range loop trace, okay? So let's see here. This one we don't need. And what do we need? So we need the number of loops. Number of loops. And then we have range. So we have to keep val. And then we have num plus 1. Okay, so on the first loop, val is what? Value 1. Num plus 1 is 3, right? So that's all that's happening. How they determine when to stop the loop is not our concern. So on the second loop, then val is 2. And then this one will always be, actually that's not true, right? This one is 4 here. Because we have 3 plus 1, 4. It'll always be 4. So then on the third loop, we have val 3, and this one is still 4, and that's what we display. So if we go to the display column, we can say, well, it'll display 1, 2, and 3, and it doesn't loop again, right? So it only goes 1, 2, 3. Again, a lot of it is happening behind the scenes. So that might be easy for some students, but students who may be like detail oriented, they're like, well, how are they doing that? Well, we don't have to worry about that, right? Questions here? Okay, no questions. Let's do the sum of squares with a for loop. Okay, so let's try that. So let's go and go here, and we're like, okay, so def sum of squares with 4. We accept some number, and then we will say for some value, some value. Again, remember, value is the target variable. The for loop controls it, it gives it some value in each iteration. So we have for val in the range 1 to num plus 1. So now we know that we're going to loop from 1 to num. Okay, we proved that here by doing this piece. So we're like, okay, so what do we do here? So we need some tabulation variable. So we make sum equals 0. And then here we need to say sum equals sum plus what? We're trying to do that sum of squares. So which variable do we use here for multiplication to square it? Num or val? If you're not sure, then we're looking at a variable that changes on each iteration, on each loop. So num, will num change? No, num will not change. Will val change? Yes, val will change, and hopefully the student here said val. Yep. So we do use val here, so we can say val times val. Enter twice, backspace once. Return sum. Now we have a good candidate for a test case. I don't know what I did to my mouse, sorry. See here, val, yeah. Let me go back into the code space. I'm not sure what a very sensitive mouse. Okay, well that's coming up, then we should test this piece, right? So let's go here, trace it. So trace for loop sum of squares. Let's trace it. So we would have the loop, and then we have val, and we have what is it? Num in the range, and then we have sum. Okay, so in loop 1, this one starts with 0, but let's see what happens. So val is 1. This one will always be 4. What happens to determine how it stops? Let's not worry about it. They do magic for us, and that's enough for us. So sum is, what is sum? 0 plus val times val, 1 times 1 equal 1. So we got that. And then we go to the second loop. and now val changes to value 2.
Is less than all web variables.
Okay, let me mute the student. Hold on. Okay. Okay, so where was I? So this one was always before. So now we have some. Let's tabulate it. So we have 1 plus 2 times 2, 4 plus 1, 5. And then we go to the third iteration, and then we have val will be 3. Again, num stays at 4. And now we have 5 plus 3 times 3, 9 plus 5, 14. So that is how we trace that piece. Let me go back to code and we can add the test case. So we go here and we're like, okay, let's add our test case for this one. So we go def test sum of squares 4. Assert equal, and we use sum of squares 4, and we use value 3. That should give us 14. Again, we need to use the quick fix to bring the import in. Quick fix, add, and notice it brings the import sum of squares 4. We can go to run test, and we can run this piece of new test. So we go here. And test sum of squares is okay. So nice, we're good, right? So let's go back to the test and let's go ahead and add one for the number 4 and number 5. So we have self dot assert equal sum of squares 4 with value 4. That should give us value 30. Self dot assert equal sum of squares 4, value 5, 55. Go to run test and we can run it. Upper right, hit run, and test sum of squares 4 is green. So we were able to demonstrate with a for loop the same example, sum of squares. Questions here? No questions. Okay, with this magic looping structure, we can also iterate what is a list in Python. So in Python, we can create a list using this syntax. We're not introducing lists yet, but I'm going to show you, like, if we use open bracket, close bracket, and then we have like 0, 1, 3, 5, or whatever, then that's a list. If we have C, C++, Java, Python, then Python sees this as a list of 5 words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or actually 4 words, right? So let's see how we can loop with the for loop. We're not going to try to loop those with a while loop, okay? We'll when we get into lists, we'll do that. But it's just to show you that this looping structure is like a magic list, right? It's a magic list conqueror, I guess, right? So if we say for num in the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, print num, then on each iteration, Python will display 1, and then the second 2, 3, 4, 5 on the third, fourth, and fifth, and so on, making it very easy for us to process a list. So let's see this. We'll go to main. No test case here. Repetition dot loop. We do not send anything. Everything happens in the function. And we're like, okay, so what's going to happen? Well, let's see. Run. And notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So how did Python do this? Let's trace this. We just trace it superficially because honestly we don't know what's going on in the internals, right? For loop list trace. Okay. Okay, we have the loop, and then let's see here. So by now we know that we're going to have X number of loops. We're going to have that target variable. In this case, I named it num, not to be confused with val. Okay, so that just proves that the target variable can be any name we choose. And then we have the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So on the first loop, Python assigns a value 1 to num and outputs it. On the second loop, it assigns it the value 2. On the third loop, it assigns it the value 3. On the fourth loop, it assigns it the value 4. And on the fifth loop, it assigns it the value 5. Again, a lot of magic is happening behind the scenes. How they do it is not our concern, right? When you get to programming 2, they'll give you like an idea of how that was done. Okay, can we also process the second list that with little effort, a word list? Can we create code for that, and is it just as easy? Yes. Let me see here. What happened there? Def loop a word list. Again, everything happens in here. We do not need any outside parameters. So we say for word in, and we have C, C++, Java, Python, print the word. Again, the target variable word can be anything. We can name it anything. I decided to name it word. And let's go and see if it runs. No test here either. We're just iterating the list. Loop word list, nothing from the outside, so no parameter. This is empty in here. And let me clear here. And notice it handles words too, with little effort. Like when we get to list, like we'll investigate more topics, but for now, like this is sufficient as far as list is concerned. Let me bring up more examples. Actually, we use them in main. The only thing I didn't use in main is sum of squares. Let me see. Oh yeah, I did, right? Maybe not for the for loop. Let me use it. So repetition. We're not going to capture input. We'll just say, okay, we just want to show that this one 3. Actually, we need a result equals, and then we print result. And let's give it a run. Go here. And we do have 14, which is what it should be. So that's fine. Ooh. Let me see here. No, you know what? Let me let me just create a good example because I think that'll make more sense. So let's capture some input here. So we'll say val equals, remember we have to make it an integer, which is a whole number. So we say integer, input, get something from the keyboard, enter a number. And then here we will say repetition some squares for, okay, val. And then we should probably ask the user if they want to okay, let's do this piece first. Okay, so we go here and enter number 5, we get 55. Okay, so nothing new there. Let me make a commit here. So for loop. So commit, so it goes in as one commit. Let me send it to my repository. Push or sync does the same thing. Okay, so now let's blow all this up. And we got like 8 minutes. You have a quiz in 8 minutes. You'll have like 25-30 minutes to do it, and it's like 5 questions, so you'll have plenty of time. What do we do here? We want to use the sum of squares, and we want we'll make it simple. We want to use the sum of squares, but we want to ask the user like if they want to continue. Okay, so let's go in here. Maybe over here we have what, prompt to user. We have here sum of squares and sum of squares. We'll choose either one. So we'll say def we'll say sum of squares user controlled, I guess, whatever. Everything happens in here, so we'll be like, okay, so what do we do here? We ask the user for a number. So we have to say int input enter a number. Okay, and then we have another variable which is keep going. We'll assume it's yes initially, and then we'll say while keep going equals lowercase y, or keep going or keep going equals uppercase y. Actually, this guy, we need it in here. And then we say result equals sum. No matter if we use which one, right? For now, we'll just stick to that one. Some value. We display the value, print. And then we ask the user if they want to go again. Input. To continue, enter y or y. Anything else ends the program. So that's how we can like use code that we've used and then like got user control to exit the program or continue the program. So let's see, here we go here and repetition dot. Okay, again, notice how our main is very small. All the logic is in this file, and you'll see that in the industry out there a lot. Like, so you won't be like, hey, wait a minute, they don't write everything on one file. So we go here and let's see, run, enter a number 5. To continue, enter y. Okay, y. Enter a number 3. To continue, enter y or y, uppercase Y. Enter a number 4. N. Notice it exits. So very simple example of how you can use concept you've learned today to like start making a program, a meaningful program that can have user interaction, which is usually what we're after. Questions here? Okay. Like a couple of minutes. I think that's, I don't want to introduce a new topic. In the next lecture, we will look at more concepts or more ways of using the for loop. And then we'll see how we can use the while loop to check data. Like say we want values like in certain range, then we can use the while loop to help us check those values. So that's a data validation. And we'll see that we can also like determine if the user gave us a number or a character or a letter, and that can be helpful to understand, like if say we're using a calculator. So if they give us something, we want to make sure that it's numeric. Otherwise, we want to tell them like, hey, wait a minute, like, and try again. Like that's not the value I need, right? So that's data validation. And we will also look at the concept of nested loops, right? Meaning we have a loop, and then within that loop, there's another loop, right? So we'll see how that works and how that can help you solve different problems or more complicated problems, okay? Let me stop the recording.